This is your tutorial for Chapter 17 in your beginning AutoCAD workbook. Okay, in Chapter 17 we're going to work on editing and adjusting some dimensions. So we're just going to open our Annotate tab. And actually let's make sure we're on our dimension layer. Then go to our Annotate tab. Okay, so the first thing we're going to look at, we've already looked at our dimension types. Let's look at these options up here on the side. So the first one we're going to look at is break. So it can break extension lines where they cross other objects. So let's say you had a dimension like this 1.137. It should never be placed like that. It should be inside here, but for this exercise, let's use that. So our command, dim break. So we want to break in this case, let's break the 2.556. So it says select dimension to add, remove, break. And then select object to break. And then just enter. Okay, the next thing we can do is we can adjust the spacing on our dimensions if we have a bunch of them and we want to space them out. So let's say, I don't know, we were dimensioning, and I'm going to turn off my snaps. Say we were dimensioning and it ended up looking, I don't know, something like this. Those dimension styles aren't correct, but let's say it's something like that. Okay, so we can do adjust space. So adjust the spacing between linear dimensions. You can use it for angles as well. The space between parallel dimension lines is made equal. You can also make the dimension lines a value that you want to specify. So let's go in there. Adjust space. So select your base dimension. So let's say we're going to leave this guy where he is, 0.870. So select your dimensions to space. That's all I want, so I'm going to hit enter. And then it will auto space them, or I can give it a distance. So I'm going to say 0.25. So it spaces them all out 0.25 from each other. If I did that and just used auto, so select my base, hit enter, adjust, select my base dimension, then select my dimensions to space, hit enter, and then for auto, just hit enter. It'll space them out, whatever it thinks the best spacing is. You can modify dimensions, all kinds of things you can modify about them. So let's select 0.870, right click on it and go properties. So we can change our layers, our colors, all of that in here. This is just information about it. We can't change anything there. We can change our lines and arrows on them. We can change the size of the arrow. We can change all kinds of things, all kinds of spacing in here. The other thing you can do is, you can't do it in here. You can check in here to see if the text has been overridden or not. You can change the height and the style, everything in here. And you can change the fit. You can change how many decimal places you want shown. You can add millimeters and inches, and you can add tolerances. So you can change all that stuff inside of the properties palette. Sometimes people will send drawings, and So this has been dimensioned 2.556. If you wanted to check, you go Properties, check under Text, and it's a measurement, 2.556. There's no text override. But let's say for whatever reason they have to fudge some dimensions. So I can double click on it. If I start typing, it's going to leave what's there already. But I can move my cursor and erase that. So now if I was to check the properties of that, I can see over here the original measurement was 2.556, but the text has been overridden. I'm going to put that back to its own dimension for a second. So let's say for some reason you wanted to add maybe text there 4 times 2.556 or 4 places 2.556. You can do that as well. Just move your cursor, do 4 times, and enter. And you'll see too, your text editor opens up here. If you needed a diameter sign, any of that stuff, you can add it there as well. Okay, and the last couple of options up here. Let's say we had a part that we had shrunk down and put a break line into. So 2.556 is our dimension of what the part actually is, or let's say it was 40 feet or whatever the actual dimension should be. But you probably had to fudge that and type it in. So let's say you had to type in 40 feet. So to show that that's not a real dimension, you can use this dimension jog line. So it says select the dimension to add a jog to, and then press the location where you want the jog symbol to be. Sometimes in manufacturing and for inspection, certain dimensions have to be looked at. So here we have inspect. So we can select a dimension. Let's say we're going to use this one again, and I'm just going to do one. You can pick as many as you want. And then we can add these labels to them. So round, angle, none, what dimension it is you want inspected, how often it needs to be inspected, if there's any info you want to add. So you'd have to play with the location for these things. But you can do that in there as well. And the last thing, let's say you were dimensioning and you put this dimension on 1.137. And you said, oh, I was set on my standard dimensioning instead of my class style. I want to change this to class style. Instead of erasing all your dimensions that aren't class style, switch to the type that you want. So we want class style. Select update. Click the dimension that you want to update and hit enter, and it'll change the dimension style for you. Okay, so that is pretty much all of the options for dimensioning. That's the end of the review for Chapter 17.